Yearning to play a few rounds of Gwent. That ought to set me straight.
Welcome to Commandos, we're in episode 109. Time marches on as we move forward to Gwent Open number 8. Today's show features two friends who work together to be the first to find the most deadly combos. Gnurgard and Wusubi join me to talk about deck building, new metas, and Shupe as a competitive card on this episode of Commandos Horror. Good afternoon, friends. It is February 15th. Great time for your weekly Gwent podcast, but not a good time for my computer as I am. It seems like it's not even just me, though. When we were talking, I'm joined by Gnurgard and Wusubi, two friends, two deck builders that I'm sure are their household names as far as the competitive community is concerned, because I think that everybody has played at least some deck that you guys have had your fingerprints on in the game. So I just want to say thanks, guys, for showing up on the podcast. And we're all kind of dealing with some technical difficulties, I think, today. I've got issues with my sound in my stream. Wusubi apparently has a laptop that's about to explode at any given time.
Yeah, you never know.
And Gnurgard, your ISP was giving you issues as well during your stream today.
Yeah, it's unwatchable from what I've heard.
So
It's just one of those days.
Yeah, it's just one of those days. It's just, it's just the universe punishing me for not doing the podcast on Thursday like I normally do. So everything's just out of whack, and I don't have a beard either, so it's a weird day. And the pink overlay, a beautiful addition here from Tien Gabor, someone who is more than generous with his time and his gifts of these awesome graphical overlays. It is putting a lot of fluorescent on my face, so first I'm shaven, and also I'm extra pale looking, I think, but that's just the way it is. That's live TV for you, live Twitch. So guys, how's your day going? Gnurgard, you already streamed today. You did a little breakdown about the new Team Aratuza meta snapshot and such. And we're going to talk a little bit about your qualifier analysis as well. But just generally, though, how has your day been going?
Yeah, waking up early. I started doing my master thesis this week, so that's what I was doing full time the whole week. So I came home, streamed a bit, and now I'm here.
And just for people who don't know who you are, maybe you can just tell everybody where you hail from and how you got into playing Gwent and kind of what your role is at the moment, because you write a lot of articles about competitive play, mindset, competitive play, and you also build a ton of decks as well, and you play at a pro level. So what would you say? How would you classify yourself, I guess, as a player, and how did you get into Gwent?
So I got into Gwent with the whole life coach noxious wave, like when everyone was dissatisfied with Hearthstone, and then Gwent was this new shiny thing. So I got a beta key, played it, was like immediately hooked, and played till then. Like at some point I was like thinking about writing articles, then I just wrote something, sent it to Swim, and he got me into Gwentelman, and then from Gwentelman it just went from one team into another. And currently I'm not with any team because I'm writing my master thesis, as I already mentioned, so no time for team stuff at the moment.
It's true, yeah. I mean, I have not done anything like that. My wife has, so I have seen what people go
you can see it
as they write their thesis. So good luck to you with that, for sure.
Thank you.
And Wusubi, a member of Team Leviathan, and how would people recognize you? You are probably you're on Team Leviathan, but what would you say your role is on the team, and how do you and Gnurgard work together and coming up with some of the decks that you come up with?
Well, I'm one of the people, right? I'm usually just like filling out in the Twitch chat, spamming memes and shit talking. So, but yeah, I joined Team Leviathan recently. Yeah. I joined the team recently just to help with the content a bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right on.
And me and Gnur, we basically just know each other from Twitch, more or less. We never met actually in real life yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, we just sort of like met online and started talking about Gwent, and eventually built some decks. Yeah.
Some of the most humble beginnings are like that. Greyboxer. If you guys even know, this is a throwback to the old guard. I I had a friend host with me this show, co-host every week from episode 4 to episode, I can't remember, 60 or 70 something. And it was at least a year, and he just sent me an email and we talked, and I just, I liked what he had to say, and I liked where his mind was at about the game and talking and stuff like that. And it could be, that was it. Like that was the whole first year of Gwent and kind of like how things started. So sometimes you just got to meet a good like-minded person, and I love having friends on. I love having 2 people that know each other just a little bit better than the average like 2 guests might be on. Like when I had Pumpkin and Ocean Mud on, I don't know if they had really talked very much, but we ended up talking for like an hour afterwards, and it felt like it was just better to get to know those guys because I don't talk to them that much. But when you have chemistry, like you guys, you build decks together. What is because I remember when I was playing, the last thing you guys touched was probably the Unseen Elder deck that I was rocking, and it was just called Gnursubi Elder, and I was being corrected in the chat. Be sure you're calling it the correct deck name, Gnursubi Elder. Just using that deck as an example, as something you guys kind of came up with, just kind of take us along that kind of new meta mindset. Here's Unseen Elder, here's a leader that people aren't exploring. What are your, do you just ask for point of view each other, or how does it work? Gnurgard,
Yeah, I think there was the mulligan patch, and I was thinking, okay, now some leaders that had lower mulligans now are viable. Elder was, I think, at 14 provisions at that point. And I really liked refreshable abilities, right? The abilities that refresh between rounds, because I really like playstyles that pronounce bleeding. So I just looked at it and threw some stuff together, and then I talked to Wusubi and said, hey, what do you think about this list? And then just like Wusubi is, he was telling, why do you run that bad card? Why do you run that bad card? So we threw a couple cards out, played a bit with it, and then went to optimizing.
Yeah, right on. And like Wusubi, like when you guys work together, do you just is it more so like, are you doing it like live on Twitch, or are you doing it off stream? How much of it is prepared before it's kind of like released into the wild?
Oh yeah, we do a lot of co-op sessions together, just like playing Gwent and having fun with it, more or less. And yeah, there's generally a lot of tests to be done right before you actually release something, or at least I believe that's what you should be doing, right? Before you like share a deck list and claim it's any good, you have to put in some sample size. So yeah.
unless you have the ambition to release a deck guide every day, and then you kind of just have to hope that your sample size is somewhat reflective, because I do that sometimes. You gotta put out a little bit, some fun stuff here and there. But the
definitely.
That's the good stuff. Yeah, that's the stuff that people like wait for. They want to see people kind of go through that iterative process and make it just better and better, refine it. But you said Gnurgard, you tend to play decks that are a bit more pushy. You like to do bleed strategies, and I think that's probably why I've liked a lot of your decks before. I've played veterans before as well. And, even though in the past I haven't seen eye to eye, some of you might remember a player, Petrify, he also just happened to play deck lists that were very, very aggressive that I also tended to like. So it's just, there are players out there that play this aggressive style that I tend to play because I just don't want to get caught off guard in the last round. I want to make sure that my opponents have survived me before they can finally engage on the final field of battle. Costs me a lot of games, though, because I tend to push even when I shouldn't, instead of just playing decks that favor pushing. But yeah, I do like that. What is it about the aggressive playstyle that appeals to you? Is it that you don't like the long round? Is it that you don't like combos? You just like do you like putting stress on your opponents? Like, what is it exactly, Gnurgard?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. Like, I also in Hearthstone and Magic, I liked aggro decks more than control decks. In Gwent, I always played pushy decks, of course. I think it's just like also in every like RPG, I'm playing barbarians, so it's just about proactiveness. I don't like waiting for them to do something and then reacting to it. I like to be the one asking questions.
That's really good. Make them have it. It's always kind of a nice. It's a principle in. I mean, I don't know if this is a large principle in card games, but I listen to a Magic the Gathering podcast in which they say this a lot. Make them have it. Like, that's how they evaluate. A card that needs an answer is a card that does require a resource from the opponent, lest you get the value that you're seeking. And from a proactive standpoint, that's really all you care about. And you posted something recently. It was I can't remember what exactly the source was, but the concept was that cards that care about what your opponent does are less valuable. Could you guys actually just I'm butchering the quote, but what was it exactly, and how does that play style kind of appeal to you?
Oh yeah, it was a quote from a book I read. It was the book that got me into writing. It's The Road of the King of Patrick Hoban. It's a Yu-Gi-Oh player. He wrote a book about card games in general, like principles that apply to any card game. And one deck building rule was if you can play cards that aren't like dependent on your opponent, because if it's dependent on your opponent, you might not get full value in any game. And you want decks to be good against a wide spread of decks, right? You don't want to have a card that's only good against like 40% of the meta, right? If you want to be the best deck, you want to be the deck that your opponents tech for, not the other way around. That's basically the principle.
Wusubi, would you say that you're an aggressive player as well? Do you share
same
sort of?
I hate control, man. It's just so boring.
Oh wow, yeah.
I like to be the one asking questions. Like you guys said, push them to the limit, and they can either deal with it or they're just gonna die, right? Because their hand is too bad.
Exactly.
Yeah, push it to the limit is actually something that we always says when we call. It's like push it to the limit all the time.
Oh, okay, yeah, we're definitely the same. I was actually thinking about. Well, let's talk about it now. It's a good conversation. Speaking of pushing to the limit and just knowing that the quality of your hand is better than your opponent's.
Yes.
Has anybody tried? This is completely off script. Has anybody tried Ardal Infiltrator, where Ardal Operator Infiltrator, where you're playing Operator Infiltrator, Ardal to take the Infiltrator back, and then kind of and also doing your mill stuff with Nilfgaard, and just making the assumption that your opponent will have a harder time drawing and mulliganing, and will just ultimately there's going to be, and Cynthia of course ultimately will at least have one brick in their hand which can equate to like a full card on your side. Has anybody tried anything like that? Because I feel like that's an aggressive style of Nilfgaard that I haven't actually come up against yet.
So regarding Ardal, we always discuss this. I'm not a huge fan of Ardal. I don't think he's a very good leader, but Wusubi always tries to tell me we just have to find the right list, and he's actually a good leader. We tried a bit of Ardal yesterday, but it was on my account that I played 2 games and I didn't want to continue anymore.
No, you got to try. I'm telling you,
it's just not my type of leader.
The Deckclogger 5000 is I'm going to make this list. I'm going to make this list. And by the way, I'm not saying Ardal is good or that list is good or that list even exists, because it doesn't, because I haven't built it yet. I'm saying that has anybody tried that particular combo, because it was just on my mind. We were talking about card quality and hand quality, and somehow it used to be a legitimate Nilfgaard strategy. Guardian was being played in top Nilfgaard decks to mess with people's mulligans. But it's the idea of putting 4 really bad cards in my opponent's deck and might increase my win rate. But would it balance out Ardal being bad? Find out this week. Next week, I'll play it.
Yeah, I just don't like the idea of any of these combos with Ardal. That's probably why people think he's bad, because everyone is trying to play like Operator on Master of Disguise, stuff like this. I think it's better to just forget about the card in general and go for value, Steal something just for sheer 8 points. It's okay.
Although, something I will say about Operator, though, and this will extend into the conversation that I would love to have about Shupe with you both a little bit later, but Operator is a card that I feel fulfills a role for deck building and for, I guess, like the constant evaluation of bronze cards, as Operator always has. And Ardal does change the conversation around Operator in that it gives you new options, like huge new options, being able to automatically take whatever Operator makes. But it's a card that is interesting, and it still feels as interesting as it always has felt, but I haven't seen it in any competitive lists. But it is still, I feel like, always in the conversation. It's walking the line that I feel like Shupe is never going to walk. It's walking the line of a card that creates a whole lot of fun and interesting opportunities, but I just don't think anybody's really going to hate Operator like people hate Shupe. I mean, first of all, Operator's not random, but the idea that it's like it's a janky card that you have to draw and you have to manufacture the combo, but it's fun to think about it. Whereas Shupe it's fun to think about it, then you play it and you realize Shupe is just a really good card, and that's that. I don't know. I just like how Operator is kind of fulfilling that role, and I think we need more cards like that in future expansions. I don't know if you guys have any feedback on that particular statement.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting card, and it actually sees some play in the Bran Beast deck, right?
Yeah,
where
like
you operate a Savage Bear, kill it immediately.
That's early on.
And then, it adds an extra beast for your graveyard and also makes your other Savage Bear stronger with the extra ping. But, like, the problem is then you just skew into Skellige, who also plays Savage Bears, and you're making their Savage Bears better, so it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those really fun cards that really never managed to find its place in the meta yet. I don't know.
Well, I mean,
it's
kind of what you just said. Like in mirrors, there is the risk that your opponent can make use of the card that like you can't just give a Northern Realms matchup a blue stripe commando. That's not good.
Yeah.
Basically giving it zeal, but at the same time, just this is the last thing I'll say about Ardal is the thing that cancels out that part because you take it.
Yes.
But it is
I definitely
combo.
think like there's some potential for sure there. Yeah, but it just seems bad for now. I don't know.
No, that's fair. The thing is, the thing about when I think about like other card games, the idea of like a janky deck is it's not supposed to work all the time and be reliable, but it's supposed to be, a fun deck building concept. But you guys are on the more competitive side of deck building, and I just wanted to like have a couple of conversations about deck building and cards that reward deck building here on Deckbuilders Delight. With Gnurgaard and Wusubi. So I just want to say real quick, this episode of Commander's Horn is recorded live on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/McBearded, and will be posted on YouTube, where you can find all Commander's Horn content at youtube.com/c/McBeard on the Commander's Horn playlist. Usually records on Thursdays, but Thursday was Valentine's Day, so I'm recording it today, which is Friday. But it's usually on Thursday, start time depending on the guests, because I like to talk to people in lots of different time zones. But the podcast is posted to the feed and YouTube no later than Friday, including today. I'll be posting it immediately after this feed. Finally, this episode is brought to you by the Commandos, and the Commando sound is not working, so Commandos. Our patrons at patreon.com/commandershorn. Shout out to all of you. So I'm going to just jump right into the news section. I'm not going to do the break or the music because my Stream Deck is not working right now. So let's just jump right into the news, my friends. The Gwent Open roster has completed itself. We have the final two competitors locked in. Team Leviathan's Green Knight, who was on the podcast last week, who I said, you're going to make it. I said it. I said it to him. I only said it to him, and he did it. So that was just, I don't usually talk like this, but that was Pog for sure.
Yeah.
Like that was just, when I found out that he went through after I had just like talked to him about it, it was just just a little bit more of a connection there. And of course, Molegion from Team Aretuza making another appearance here at another Gwent Open, going the hard. Well, would you say this is the hard way? What do you guys think? Do you think the hard way is the qualifier or the hard way is the top 6 grind? I mean, it's one of them is more more rewarded in your consistency and skill, and one of them is kind of more rewarding in your endurance. And you have to do go through 2 tournaments to get to the tournament, so it's definitely not easy. Which one do you think is really more demanding for the average pro player? Anybody can field this one.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and say the qualifier is basically just a PvP zone. It's really tough. It's definitely harder because, I mean, while it's obviously difficult to get into the top 6, you have to be consistent the entire season as you're playing. But yeah, the qualifiers, like, anyone can steal it at that point out of the 16 players, right? So it's just like, it's a bit too random sometimes. I mean, anyone can make it, right?
It's true. Anyone can make it. Like, there's something that, like, there's a line that people do have to, like, draw, where there has to be a significant commitment of time and a high level of skill required for any competitive game to really get the cream of the crop. So there's like a line where, is this taking too long to be part of it? It should never feel like that. It should feel like it should feel like the idea that taking too long is kind of a defense mechanism for, I think, the average person that's trying to do anything, even get pro rank. Even me, I still never put forward like the full on like break into pro rank grind yet. I just haven't really. I stream and I play, but I only play 3 hours a day, and I'm usually testing stuff out. But I always could make the argument, well, I don't have the time, so that's it. But if time is not a factor and skill is the only factor, more players would have to reflect on the fact, well, you know what? I don't have the skill. And I think that for a game, that I feel like that's a drive killer. I don't know. I feel like that's a bit of a drive killer, but there still has to be an investment of time that matters. So the people who have more time will likely always do better, and that's probably not always going to feel great. I think if you really feel like you're good enough, qualifier makes it a bit easier.
Yeah, and you can see people like Radu, I think. She only streams on weekends and she has a job, so she probably also doesn't have that much time, but she made it into an open because of a qualifier, right? So that's how you can do it without just grinding the whole day. Yeah,
Radu's storyline was really cool. It was really great to meet her at the last open, which is, we're talking about the tournament that occurred before the one that's about to occur, but it occurred in, what was it, August? Like it was September, I think. No, it was August, I think.
Yeah, it was last open,
it was
right?
a very long time ago, and the idea that that Gwent Open was is part of the same block, you could say. It's surreal, but it was really great to meet Radu, and hopefully I'll get a chance to meet her again at another competitive event. As TLG is just all over the place right now. 3 players in Gwent Open number 8. That's pretty cool.
Oh yeah,
that's pretty cool. It's got to feel pretty good for the team.
Yeah, we're thrilled about that, obviously. Yeah.
And we talked really briefly during the pre-show, and I'm saying pre-show like as a euphemism for my technical issues, and we were just talking, but just to make sure that we didn't miss the chance to talk about it. I just wanted to say that for the qualifiers, I did watch the qualifiers, a lot of them. I watched it on Croger's stream, so shout out to any potato people there in the chat who were part of that one there. Croger also a TLG member, so we have a lot of Gnurrgard. Are you spamming emotes?
Yeah.
Get those
I'm just looking if I'm not subbed to Crozer anymore.
Oh no. Jamoni's got the gravy right there. There we go. Jamoni, we can count on Jamoni for that one. So anyway, Croger did a really great job. He was undefeated for the first 5 games and he qualified. He actually lost his first game to Green Knight, who is completely undefeated in the Swiss, which is amazing. Yeah. I mean, every player that has ever done that has impressed me. And there's only been, how many times has that happened, going undefeated in the Swiss? That's like happened maybe 3 or 4 times ever. So that's, it's really good. I know that Slovenats, I think that was the name of a player who did it. Anyway, it's a rare thing to do it, and it's very hard to do it. So Green Knight, but the other thing is the people who have done that have never qualified. I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Green Knight did. Green Knight was strong on day 1 and strong on day 2, so that was really good. And Molegion, Molegion is the only reason Molegion is less of a story is that he's been to Gwent Open before, so he's not a new face. So like seeing him at a competitive event is maybe less surprising because he's not a new face. But Molegion getting through, he had some really tough customers to go through. Like the top 16 was pretty elite. I felt like I knew a lot of names in the qualifiers, personally. Which did anybody watch? Did anybody watch from Trinet's point of view at any point? I know, Gnurrgard, you said you didn't get a chance to take in a lot of it. Yeah. Wusubi, did you get a chance to see it from Trinet's point of view?
I mean, Crozer was streaming at the same time, right? So I was kind of just hanging out there.
It's true, yeah.
Yeah. You have to support the teammate, right?
It's true. And he was playing that Metal Gear Solid soundtrack, which made it extra intense. It was just, it was like, it's like it's like you're in the chair with him when it's like
you got to see all the raw emotion. It was amazing.
Yeah, like the Metal Gear soundtrack that's what he's hearing in his mind as he's thinking about his trays. That like so good. It was just a really entertaining experience because I don't get to watch tournaments really. I do. I'm like the person who watches the tournament, but casting a tournament isn't really watching it. Like sometimes I can't even appreciate the stuff that's happening because I have to think about it a little bit later. Like the small thing that mattered at the beginning that happened like right before like the explosive play was maybe more important than the other play, but like just be able to like to sit down and actually like listen to the player talk about it. It's just actually something that I don't take in very much. As a streamer, I don't watch a lot of Twitch. So it was fun on the weekend. I got to work on a lot of graphic stuff and it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. Other piece of news is the Season of Love border given away yesterday, but I don't know if it's a limited time thing. Maybe people in the chat can tell me because I logged in yesterday to get it. But it looks like in lieu of seasonal events not being started, the Season of Love border, which was ready art-wise, but not ready, I guess, implementation-wise for the reward book, was just given to us as a gift. So it's not like the top tier February border that I guess we could get some point next year, but it's cool looking and it's cool to have it, and not everybody's going to have it. but it was limited. Oh, it's already over, and it was a 1-day thing. It's caught me by surprise, actually. I would have put a PSA out. I don't know. That's cool though.
I mean, I imagine they would just re-roll it the next Valentine's, right?
Oh, for sure.
Have it available again, but yeah.
Did you get it on all of your Smurfs, Wusubi?
No, I missed it completely. God, it was like today until noon, and I was out, so yeah. Whatever.
Okay. It's that's really cool. So they found a way to give it to everybody and also make it exclusive. So
yeah,
the fact that at the same time. So the fact that you can rock the heart logo in September, there are going to be a lot of players that maybe even were playing during that time that didn't get it. I mean, that's not fun for people to know that they missed something, but at the same time, I don't know. I feel like I'm okay with this one. This was kind of like a quick one. They pulled a fast one on us a little bit, but it was just for cosmetics.
It should have been there, buddy, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
should have been there. Exactly. Should be following him on Twitter. It's your own damn fault. It's true.
But was it any special border, or was it just one of the love borders, like 1,000 or something?
I mean, assuming that if you look in the reward book, you see a border that is more elaborate than the one that we got. It has a little botchlet creeping over, like the roses. Yeah. So just judging on how they've done seasonal borders in the past, based on like your placement, I heard that the border that we got would have been like the top 10,000 border, like the equivalent of that, not the top. There's 2 borders above the top 10,000 border, right? The top 1,000 and the top 100. So I think that
yes,
it would be equivalent to getting top 1,000. Yeah, top 10,000. So yeah, so you're going to be able to get it again in February, but you could get a better one in February depending on how they do these seasonal events. I mean, I think that there's nothing really tied to the MMR scoring for people below pro rank. So I feel like there's still going to be leaderboard stuff for these seasonal events, and I hope that there is. I hope it's not just the faction battle was fun, but I felt like you could just get it while playing. I like that the borders still have some sort of elite nature to them. Do you guys feel the same way? Do you guys want there still to be like exclusivity and not just be like a time investment? I felt like the faction battle was a little bit more of a time investment. Gnurrgard, I'll pitch that one to you. So I don't have directed questions in this one.
When they made the borders accessible, I found it was a good idea. There was only like one thing I didn't like. The avatars 100% should be available to everyone. Like they had it for top 1,000 at first or something, and that wasn't very cool.
Toxic
yeah, exactly.
Girl was like a really hard one to get. I think still very few people have it. Toxic Girl.
And then that's like you got top 500, and it was like just a border with a piece of cloth on it. It didn't really feel satisfying, right? You went to top 500 and got a small little border. Yeah, but what I didn't like was like re-rolling the borders from previous seasons, because let's say Sinrise got the only border that was for top 1, and then a couple of seasons later, top 1,000 got it. Top 100.
Yeah.
Literally ranked 20 players, and it was like a reward for him being ranked 1 at the time. It's like insane.
I know I felt a little bit of a sting with that one as well with the closed beta. I busted my ass to get that top. Top 1,000. Oh man, and the top 1,000 closed beta border is the worst border you get. Like it's the tiny little skinny one with no swords or shields or spikes on it, and now it's just everybody has that border. But for a year, I was one of the only 1,000 people that had it. Like that was like super cool, and that's gone. Like they could have at least changed the color. I mean, it's like I don't like getting nitpicky about little things like this because cosmetics are really not. There are. I mean, I still have the Pioneer title. Like I still have stuff that like not a lot of people have, but. Man, that border was like the one thing that like showed that I was good once. Like as far as like the cosmetics, I could really flex on people. Like it was like one of my highest placement. And it was at a time where, the people that were playing were the hardest core players. There was a smaller player base, so maybe it was easier to hit top 1,000, but it really wasn't that easy. It took a lot of dedication, and I sweat on that last day. I was sweating. I was in Montreal too. I didn't even have a normal computer. I had like Wasubi's laptop. It was about to explode. I was playing my last game, Trebuchet full test against Dagon, and I won it. And I looked at my placement. I'm like 600. I'm like, that's got to be good enough. And I just stressed out until midnight. That was my story. Sorry.
Yeah. I don't think they should have re-rolled the closed beta ones. That was pretty special. Because it was very specific too. It was like top 1,000, top 500, top 250, top 100, then even like top 10 got like champion or something, and top 1 got hero, I think. Something like that. But they just rerolled all of it to like any player. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that they care about exclusivity, and I think they also care about accessibility because, again, just like everything in this game, just like every card that's ever going to be made in this game, there's going to be a player that looks at it and says, you know, this card is competitive or this card is not competitive. Those people are the players that are playing for the top ranks and that are playing for the big money. But that's not every player. That's probably not even... I mean, I don't even know what the percentage is, but isn't it like probably only 5% of players are that extreme? But you see those people on streams, you see those people at tournaments, they have names, they have articles, they have Reddit posts, they're on Reddit. So those are the people that are out there. But there are a lot of people that were just kind of bummed out that because they weren't the top 1,000 or 10,000 or whatever it was, that they couldn't have these things. So that kind of sucked too. Like, so exclusivity is important for the hardcore and accessibility is important for the casual. And hopefully everybody feels happy with what we get because Gwent's very generous. I kind of always want there to be something to chase. Like, I don't want there to be, I want there to be something that I always feel like is out of my comfort zone to achieve it. Like that border to get 100 wins with every Thronebreaker leader. I'm going to have to go through 100 Eldane wins and 100 Ardal wins. I'm going to have to do it because I really want that border and it's going to be hard. That's just it. So, but let's talk about some other stuff here. We have 2 big releases this week. First of all, we have a fresh Team Aretuza snapshot. Gnurgard, you just broke it down on your stream earlier today. But we can talk about it, some important stuff, because you also provide some really cool stats that I wanted to talk about. And we also have Team Leviathan Gaming released a brand new website that kind of puts it I guess on the same stage as the other kind of homegrown stuff that we've seen. We've seen a lot of Gwent teams kind of grow. This is kind of like were nothing before Gwent came. Gwentelman is probably the first thing that was like very much like the first Gwent team. That's long since gone through its history, but Team Aretuza is out there, and I follow a lot of games that have like their homegrown teams. But the TLG website looks fantastic. Wusubi, what do you think about the new website? I mean, this just got released yesterday, I believe.
Yeah, like we're not entirely finished with the content yet either, but we're gonna slowly release it there. Yeah, I mean the design is quite nice and yeah, easy to operate as well. So the interface is amazing, I think. So yeah,
I think it's just good. This kind of content coming out for Gwent is just good for the game. Like I feel like just to use myself as an example, just the help that I've gotten from Tien Gabor, graphic designer, who has helped with the podcast. Like I feel like it has genuinely increased the quality of this program, and I feel like when people come in to take in Gwent content, that when the quality of the content is better, the game itself looks better. It's kind of like the idea of you see League of Legends tournaments with their big lights, but then you can go and look at kind of lower production budget fighting games that are just trying to get off the ground, and they are sitting on chairs in a basement somewhere. But they want the lights around the game. These people are all in that room in that dark basement, and they want the game to be so good, and they'll give anything to play that game that they love on a stage like a League of Legends stage. So, it's that kind of passion that drives, I think, the teams out there and the people out there to produce better content. And I think the TLG is showing that, and they, it doesn't hurt that you guys have 3 top players that are in the Gwent Open.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Well. So, there's a lot of good stuff coming in for the TLG website, and Team Aretuza, of course, continuing to impress with a very detailed snapshot covering something like 26 decks and the tier list. So something I actually would like to talk about with both of you right now. Gnurgard, you brought up an awesome spreadsheet here, a breakdown of the qualifiers, the decks that people brought to the Gwent Open 8 qualifiers, and the breakdown of what people saw. I know that you've talked about this a lot, but I'd like to know your most important points about this and how it relates to how the top players are actually viewing this meta at the highest level right now.
Yeah, so of course the most interesting point was at the end of the stream where earlier at the table I was saying, okay, the Krachhorn, Morvran, any Morvran version, and Gnurrgard, big Gnurrgard, they look like the best 3 decks right now. And then today, the snapshot of R2's releases, and guess what's tier 1? It's exactly these 3 decks. So, yeah, it seems like most of the
number 1 though. Didn't they have Big Woodland at number 1 and Gnurrgard on tier 2? Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, they had Gnurrgard on tier 1.
Oh, okay. I think Gnurrgard is extremely good.
Talked to Legion about it, and he thinks that Gnurrgard is better. Woodland with a slight edge in the mirror is what we said at the beginning, but I don't know if he still is of that opinion.
I mean, Molegion's opinion on competitive play is definitely better than mine, but I felt like Woodland was harder for me than, as opposed to like it being like it didn't take on the matchup, and I was never in a position of confidence. Like I would do my best, but I felt like Woodland just had the upper hand a lot of the time, or I wasn't teched for it. But I like Gnurrgard a lot. I think Gnurrgard is just very, very strong. Of the new leaders, it seemed like now Meave and Gnurrgard, I mean, of the new leaders, who has had the biggest impact on the game? Because I thought that I'll throw this one to you, Wusubi, your teammate Alessio, on the last Ultraman, of course, Ultraman 1996 is what I mean to say. He brought to my attention that Gnurrgard offered a brand new way to play monsters that really wasn't how people were playing as or against monsters, and was also a competitive way to play monsters as well. Do you think Gnurrgard's impact on the game is bigger than Meave's impact that actually just improved all of Northern Realms cards?
Yeah, well, it's quite hard to say, right? Because Meave also kind of revived the Northern Realms, which is really good. Because yeah, all the bronzes which otherwise wouldn't really be of any use, they suddenly get really good when they get boosted by one, basically any engine, right? So that's very impactful for the game as well, and we see all the Meave lists just coming out from the darkness. But Gurney, like, yeah, the difference between Gurney and Woodland is like she has a better control over round 1 and 2, right? Because of the thrives of the fruit. So yeah, like Woodland has a slightly better finisher, let's say, but Gurney just has a better control over the rounds in general. So she's quite impactful, yeah.
I mean, she feels like when I play Gnurrgard, it feels like I'm playing. I feel like I'm playing tutors from old Gwent. Like adding +2 to a card that I'm playing is really good. So when I play my Witchers for 9, but I'm actually playing them for 11 at the beginning of round 2, like that's really hard for the opponent to deal with in a lot of cases. Just to like immediately just kind of face that 11. That's, you know, it's not always that you have Witchers in round 2, but I mean like adding 2 to anything you're playing is really, really good, I think. So. Or setting up just a third Thrive with Necros in round 1. Like, I think Gnurrgard is just awesome. Just before we get too far away from actually talking about the qualifiers, though, I just wanted to read off the stuff above the line here on this list. So the qualifiers had, what was, I don't know the total number. What was the total number of players that actually ended up participating in this?
It was 53.
Yeah,
53
players. So of those 53 players, wow, that's actually that's half. Of those 53 players, 27 of them brought Croc Commander's Horn. That's a high amount.
Surprise.
Yeah.
It's a very good deck. It's a very good deck.
Oh,
but
yeah.
A lot of people, I mean, people think that Skellige's not in a bad place, or is it just that Croc is so much better than everything else? Like, why do people think, I mean, I could just be wrong. I could just be maybe just in the wrong bubble at the wrong time in the wrong conversation, but I have seen a lot of complaints that Skellige isn't quite there, or Nilfgaard doesn't quite have the identity, but we're seeing Skellige and Nilfgaard at the top of these qualifier lists. 18 people brought Morvran mid-range, and 14 people brought Morvran Shupe, which is 32 people bringing Morvran at all, which means that Morvran was the highest represented leader. Well, that's just in the top, that's like the top list. There's even more Morvrans beyond this. It's crazy. And then you also
there are some more Krach lists if you go down, so probably Krach still brought leader.
Yeah.
13 people brought
Different
Vengeance,
variations.
and 12 people brought this big Gnurrgard list. And of the top 8 people, all 8 people had Croc Horn in their lists. Is that what I'm
Of course
saying?
they did.
Of course they did. So what's the deal with Croc Horn? Why is it the clear-cut most picked deck for players that had everything on the line here for the qualifiers? Was it the nature of the qualifiers, or is it just that the deck is just very strong no matter how you come?
I mean, if you're looking at a field of 53 players, that's a lot. You want to just pick solid decks. You don't want to go too fancy, because you can run into anything. And I think if you think about any like solid deck, Krachon is the one that comes to mind. It just plays points. It isn't reactive. It doesn't play Scourge or War or something fancy. Just plays points with Herald, Arn, then it cycles through the deck with discard. So it's just good at doing the same thing, the same strong thing all the time. So I think it's just a perfect deck for such a big tournament.
So do you share this?
Pretty much.
What do you think
I mean, turns out seeing your entire deck every game is quite good, right? And then you just slam the points.
Right? It always has been. That's been Gwent's. I think consistency has always been the number one thing that the best decks have had the most control over, really. So the Darren nerf really didn't hurt Skellige all that much.
Yeah, I mean, you don't even have to play Darren at all. Yeah. So now you just get rid of him, and instead of seeing your entire deck every game guaranteed, you thin down to 2 cards, which is just equally good with the new mulligan system, right?
Yeah.
And like you can even replace him with Roach to get that one extra thing as well. Like it really didn't make any difference for Skellige.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of people in the chat are talking about Point Slam and Croc and
you
and
just
monsters.
Slam points, whatever.
Do you tend to make those numbers larger and larger very fast? So, you know, I've called it tempo as well, but it's sometimes consistency and tempo is very dangerous stuff. And then there is Meve, which is not tempo, which is not Point Slam, but still a lot of players still felt that it was worth bringing. Only 2 players that had it in their list made it to the top 8. I believe Green Knight was running Meve Shupe. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so he was in there playing Meve as well, but not this engine list. But Meve Engines is really showing itself as a real champ out there. It's just really hard to deal with every threat that Meve can place when she makes them all have that extra strength.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very strong, and makes me wonder, how are they going to balance armor if just that little bit of extra protection can make all the
plus
difference?
1, right? Yeah.
Plus 1's a big deal.
If you think about it in an interesting way, Meve is basically Point Slam as well, right? You just keep slamming engines one after the other, and they cannot answer all of them, right? So some of them are going to stick, and you're just going to win.
So why does this? I mean, it's one of them is going to stick, yeah. But is it that Control just doesn't have a chance, even if they? Why is Control so unfavored here to stop the points? Because in the past, Control would one Control deck being good would probably not show a skew this hard against tempo decks. I feel like we're not seeing a lot of Control now that Shiru is gone, and artifacts and Ethna, that kind of stuff has been kind of blockaded a little bit, at least by the resources available or the mechanics of the cards. Did that just open the floodgates up for just big points all over the place? Is there a way that we can approach a meta where these are the strong decks, or is it just the tempo is too good? What do you guys think about this? Gnurrgard, I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think I once had an interview with Graves from Team Gentleman back then, and we talked about why Control Beta wasn't that good. And one of the things he mentioned was didn't really have board clears except for the past. And now, if you remember the Wolfsbane meta, there was like Wolfsbane, Shiru, and Walpo. We actually had a meta with 3 very good board clears, and it was kind of like a control meta, right? Like, every good deck was kind of control-y. And then now that Squirtle is nerfed, and Wild Boar also isn't that good anymore because of boosts, and Wolfsbane also was nerfed. Now we are back to Point Slam.
I mean, is that just the natural? Wusubi, do you think that's just the natural evolution of a meta, or do you think that we can? That this is going to shift?
That's what the game always has been, right? Every patch basically just gets rid of the most unfun stuff, let's say, and then it just kind of shifts from Point Slam to Control over and over and over. Like, it's just.
Do you think this shift? Do you think that this meta can be shifted without a patch? I mean, like, do you think that this is? Do you believe that tempo is in an unbeatable spot? I guess in this iteration of the game before the expansion?
I mean, well, with the patch at the end of this month, they are obviously definitely gonna nerf monsters, right?
I mean, they have to, right? As much as it. I mean, I like
yeah.
But
I mean, this patch they nerfed all the control cards, right? Professional, Yrden, they even buffed Ozril, so it doesn't play into professional anymore. Just been patch after patch. They are just buffing monsters, right? So it has to stop now. They're gonna nerf them, right? And nerf the big boys. And then hopefully like Shupe gets looked at, cards like that. And then, yeah, it's probably going to be back to control again. Who knows?
I hope they don't. I hope when they, like, if they look at monsters, I hope they don't just go the direction of making their bronze core worse, because I think that the factions need to live up to monsters bronze core. It's just, you can take all the, like, and I said this, I released I've done 2 Gnurrgard videos now in the last 2 weeks, just because I've been loving playing this leader. But it's just the universal nature of Thrive is just Thrive is always good. Thrive is always points. Doesn't matter what you're playing. Death Wish, Deploy, doesn't matter what it is. It's points on the board. It's extra points on the board. So it was always my favorite mechanic. Maybe it's just because the mechanic is, there's like, the only way to make that mechanic bad is, like, you get the value you get. It's spread out. It's also spread out amongst all these different bodies as well. Like, it's good in short rounds, long rounds. Like, resets don't hurt it. You'd have to like massively target a reset to hurt it. I just feel like Thrive is just so damn good, and having Thrive in your bronze set alone, just having Thrive alone, makes every card better, because every card can be worth extra points.
Yeah, I think monster bronzes are in a very good state right now. Like, you have everything you basically need for the faction to have an sort of an identity, right? Like, you have Thrives, you have Death Wish, you have all these synergies with Consume and throwing stuff. Then you also have Riders for some thinning, or maybe even Foglets, but yeah, no one plays those. And yeah, it's just a really good state for the bronzes, I think. Like, maybe only Skellige can compete there, but that's just because of the thinning, right? Because of Skulls.
Yeah, and if you look at the bronze of these factions, you can kind of see these 2 factions are the ones that want to run Shupe the least, just because the bronzes are so good, right?
Exactly.
I wouldn't play a monster deck with Darkspawn and Drana. I think 2 of them, and then in Skellige I want 2 skirmishers, 2 skulls at least, and probably
these cards are just really, really good. Yeah.
The thing is, like, Monster's Shupe list is actually pretty good, because even the other cards aren't that bad, and like, because you're running one-ofs of like maybe a Harpy Egg or a Bridge or Rotfiend, first of all, you're thriving on all of those, and second of all, then you can run, then your Cyclops is just better automatically, because it's like, okay, well, I still have a lot of Death Wishes, and maybe I can run Griffin, so I can always eat the fruit, but if I need to eat something, at least I have extra Death Wishes. And you know, Maelorn is usually fine to run one of those, and Shupe's good, as we know. And even Divana Runestone, somebody in the chat here, Jamoni, just said, I looked through the entire card collection and Monster has the least amount of bad cards, in his opinion.
Exactly.
But I mean, Divana Runestone, like, that card is good because every card triggers Thrive. They could all be used as Cyclops bullets. Like, that card is like legitimately Shupe gold. It's a good card.
Oh yeah.
I love it. Anyway,
that's the thing with Shupe though, right? If your bronzes are so good, there's basically no reason to play Shupe.
There's no reason for
I mean, the
Shupe want to double up on the good cards,
Yeah, I mean,
and the Shupe monster list is good because it's monsters, not because it's Shupe, right? Like, it's just a monster deck that can also run Shupe, so it's kind of it will work, but in the end, you're better off with just a normal, consistent monster deck.
I think this is a good time to kind of segue into our strategy section. I'm not going to play any sort of drop or anything like that, because my Stream Deck, like I said, is not playing my sounds. So I think that we're kind of already talking in the strategy section if we're going to talk about Shupe, so we should just kind of segue right into it. First of all, I just want to ask you guys that we're past the hour at this point. Are you guys okay for time to keep chatting?
All good.
Sure.
You guys all good? All right, just want to make sure.
Yep.
So, like, the idea of Shupe was originally concepted as a deck building challenge card, with a number of options. Yeah, I know. This is like, I know. Like, I remember I can't remember what event I was going to, but I was in line for security at an airport, and I was just having a Discord conversation, like they have to make this card OP, right? Because in a world where Gwent has 3 of bronzes, not in the world we're currently in with 2 ofs. Having just 1 of in a game where 3 ofs and all the consistency is so important. I'm like, Shupe has got to be OP. They have to make his card OP to make up for how bad your deck would have to be. And then it turned out that the decks weren't that bad, but it also turned out that the card was OP at the same time. So you had good decks with a really, really good card in it. Whoopsie. And now, it's just because you're not really hurting your deck. You're just finding it's a deck building challenge, but once the challenge is solved, you just have a very strong deck that people can use. And I feel like it's not really doing the intended thing, but I feel like, honestly, I mean, did you guys think that Shupe would be a constant issue when it was first shown? I'll throw this to Gnurrgard first.
When it was released, you mean?
Yeah, like when it was originally shown to be a 15 outcome card that required your deck to be before we even played with the card. I guess the assumption was your deck was bad, but had this crazy card in it that could be good one round. It didn't look great, right? It didn't seem like
especially in a game dominated by Tudors. I didn't see any potential in that card. Like we were used to bronzes thing out of bronzes and your whole deck getting thinned out, and with Shupe you couldn't do that. So I didn't see any potential in that back then.
And then when you saw Gwent Open number 7, was it Gwent Open number 7, or 6? Whichever one had the finals come down to the Shupe mirror. It was number 6.
Oh yeah,
number 6.
Wusubi, yeah, I think it was 6.
Did you think the game was in a good state with Wusubi when you saw that matchup between Qualifiers and Ponyo?
Oh yeah, just games coming down to RNG. That's fun, right?
There's a kappa in there somewhere, I'm sure. But yes.
Oh yeah.
It is. Yeah. So it's not always good. We don't always want to see a card like that. However, there are people out there that just like Shupe as a concept. This, it's a deck building card. But much like Operator is a deck building card, Shupe is competitive and just completely a wild and crazy just bag of tricks. Like it's like, okay, well, I have 15 options and I can do anything. I feel like I can do anything at all. Can something with 15 outcomes ever be like okay? Like it's either going to be competitive or it's going to be completely unreliable and you can't play it. But it still would have to be fun, right? It would still have to be something you tried to make work. But it seemed like Shupe is just chaos. At least with Operator, you have some sort of consistency. You have a plan. But with Shupe, it's just absolute chaos. Like, do you think that a 15 outcome range of outcomes can ever really be a card that's okay for the game? It's kind of a big, heavy question. Gnurrgard, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's the problem with Gwent. I think we had the discussion when Artifact came out, and we talked a lot about RNG in card games. In Gwent, it's the problem that every turn has so much impact on the... Like in mana-based games, you can just drop a turn, don't play a card because you didn't hit your curve, and sometimes you can recover. But in Gwent, it's like if you have that one big turn your opponent can't recover, you're often in a pretty good situation. And that's exactly what Shupe does, right? If you have that one good roll, you just put the game completely in your favor.
Yeah, and let's just talk about all the ways that Shupe can win you a game. You can lock a unit, destroy an artifact, boost your hand up by 1 to 2, so you just have a better hand than your opponent. You can destroy a random enemy, killing something that's immune. You can deal 9 damage to all the enemies, which also kills immune, and sometimes 2 engines at once. You could create resilience in round 1 and save yourself a card. You could just also play a 12-point card because Shupe will always roll like a 12-point value card on the night side. Or if your opponent is foolish enough to play a very, very good card on round 1 going first, you can just steal that card potentially.
Mage is really good there.
You just steal the card, which is probably... And because that card is even more random now, because it also can move something from your side of the board to your opponent's side of the board, if you hit that in the Hail Mary, this is the only way I can win the game play, you might as well just be reducing the Gwent player base. Every opponent you beat that way will never play Gwent again. So you're actually killing the game when you play Shupe Mage in a Hail Mary play. Don't do it. It's not a nice thing to do. But those are all the ways that Shupe could just win you a game, and those are all reliable things because you're going to see one of those things. Especially like Shupe Hunter is like once like 2 cards have been played, it's always good. It can't be good.
Yeah.
And sorry, guys, it sounds like my volume has been fairly low on this podcast, so I'm just going to turn myself up. And sorry for the issue if that's the case. So yeah, 15 outcomes. Wusubi, do you feel like is there a way to tune these, or is it just to have too many options? I think is the problem. Too many solutions to problem.
Yeah. You could either like narrow the options down to like maybe just 3 or 4. Make them like, I don't know, maybe less powerful but more reliable, right? You could always get what you want. Or I don't know really, because the thing right now with Shupe is doesn't really cripple your deck in any way. You're just playing an OP card, right? Because with the new provision system, you actually don't really mind playing one-offs. Like there's not really that many great bronzes that you would want to play 2 of, right? With the exception of being Skellige, because they have skulls and skirmishers, and monsters because they have Wild Hunt Riders, right? These are the factions that basically aren't playing Shupe. But then Gnurrgard and Scoia'tael sometimes, and are also with Neve, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just you basically take a bad deck that plays some mediocre to okay cards, then you put Shupe in there, and it just works.
It's yeah. I mean, it shouldn't be like, you know, the final
that
ingredient.
easy. Yeah.
It's like the soup is terrible, and then you add the final ingredient, and then it's the best soup you've ever tasted. It shouldn't be quite like that. I had the idea that every faction could get their own Shupe, like the idea that if you play a singleton Northern Realms deck, you get Shupe Mage, and obviously the Shupe Mage would do different things. But it's like that, like, you know, the Mage could go to Northern Realms, Knights go to Nilfgaard, Hunter goes to Scoia'tael, you get the idea. They make a Pirate for Skeleton. Yeah. So I thought that they could do something like that, so at least each faction had a different way to play Shupe, and then Shupe would be maybe, instead of being a 13 provision card, is now maybe like a good card that can still do some pretty wild things, but is more maybe like a 7 or an 8 provision card that is good value-wise, slightly unreliable, fun, and does faction stuff. Like,
I think that's the way to go about it, yeah.
Zeal and charges that you can recharge, and he has, like, you know, Shupe could have all the things that you care about. You know, he could count as a elf for a dryad or a dwarf for Scoia'tael. Like, he's, you know, stuff like that. Like, the idea that Shupe just signs up for the army that gives it, and you're like, I'll do whatever you want. I'll be a catapult, sure. Okay, now I have charges. Okay, I think it's a cool idea, but I feel like it would go against the heart of the. I mean, I almost said heart of the card. I almost actually said heart of the card. But I think that it's a fundamental reworking of a card, and I don't advocate card reworks because I think we've had so many of them, so many of them in Gwent, you guys. It makes me tired just thinking about it. But at the same time, I mean, obviously I'm biased. It's an idea of mine that I like the idea, but I also don't know how it would work, how it would be executed. But I think that I felt like Siri Nova could use a card like this too back in the day. Instead of giving a neutral Siri Nova to a deck that just has a 20-point play or whatever it was, 22 points, I can't even remember. Instead of giving that to every deck, why don't you make a card that has a trigger that cares about your faction? Like, you know, if you play this and you have 2 of a card, now this card has Crewman 2 or something that like a card would never have. You know, rest in peace, Crewman. But I mean, like, that kind of idea. Like, just instead of it being a cool card that it homogenizes everything that you play it with, like, you're just playing good stuff with Shupe because you have to, right? You have to. That was my ramble about Shupe. So I guess, I mean, do you think that a card that supports a deck building challenge, do you think it has to be a bomb is kind of what I'm getting at? Because right now Shupe is a bomb. But it's still a deck building card, whereas
the problem is there's no challenge, right?
Well, no, I'm using it
in there and it works.
So I mean, let's not be super literal with it. Let's say a card that presents a condition that needs to be met in the deck builder before it actually can function as a card. So challenge condition. Does a card like that need to be a bomb? Because in Gwent, all of those cards have been bombs. Even Viper Witchers felt very bomb-like when they came down to actually building around them. I don't know. Does it have to be a bomb, or can it offer utility in a different way? For instance, we don't have reconnaissance anymore. What if you built your deck in a certain unreliable way, like you were saying, monsters don't play it because you want Wild Hunt Riders? Well, what if the monsters Shupe actually helped you pull stuff out of your deck? That would be good, and it would be super strong to pull stuff out of your deck if you already had the consistency of playing stuff like Riders. So, like, I like a utility-based thing instead of a bomb. But is that an exciting card? Is Shupe supposed to be exciting? I'm thinking about it a lot because I think about all the stuff that's dangerous for the game, let's say.
Yeah.
I think the issue with that is that if you're already going to like build your deck in a certain way, you want to be rewarded for it. Right? You don't want a 7 provision card or something that's like
you
cool
want the bomb.
You want something really strong as a reward for building a deck in a certain way. And then since Gwent is a game about high impact, that already like is a problem in itself, right? Because finishers are always the name of the game. Like since closed beta, I think we always had like big finishers.
It's true. I mean, I can use the argument for I can argue against and for what you just said using a Hearthstone reference. So bear with me, guys. Reno Jackson obviously was a huge bomb, being able to heal yourself to full. Reno Jackson was a singleton card in Hearthstone, so you had to build your deck similarly to a Shupe deck, just one of. So Reno Jackson would heal you to full, which is a lot of health, and generally wins you the game if you have the ways to take it. However, Hearthstone also released cards. There's a card called Prince Keliseth, I think, where you couldn't put any cards in your deck that cost 2 mana, and it improved your deck overall. So it actually felt like a difference between like Woodland Spirit and Gnurrgard, where like Gnurrgard is getting value all day long. Woodland Spirit's going to punch you in the face at the very end of the game. So I think that it's possible to make these deck building cards desirable to play. Although there's more strands to that conversation. Obviously, Hearthstone had odds and even cards and decks and whatever. Like we're not going to get into a huge conversation about it, but it was still a deck building card that didn't mean that the payoff for your reward was not an immediate payoff. It was more of a burn, like a benefit over time. So I think it's possible, and I think that Gwent needs more of those cards, and I think that those would be interesting additions. What do you guys think in the chat? I would love to know what you guys think about it. Think in the chat. Actually, let's. I would like to get some questions from the community. So tag me at McBearded for the chat if you have any questions for our deck builder extraordinaires Gnurgard and Wusubi. I'll throw the first question at them because this is kind of still part of what we had in the show notes. So my first question to you guys is, what's the first thing you think about when you design a deck? What do you tend to stick with certain leaders? We already talked about how you both like the aggressive, proactive style. So do you generally start with that base, or does it start somewhere else? Do you look at combos that you think have potential to test out? And how does that refinement process go?
I can start with this one, right? So I'm not the kind of guy that just like wants try out some of the new cards for fun, right? I want to find the stuff that I can abuse the most, just make my opponents cry. If I see like a card like that, I'm like, okay, I'm all over that. I'm gonna try it all day long. Yeah, that's basically it. Try to pinpoint the stuff you can abuse, and then like sort of try to build a deck around it in a most efficient way.
All right, so smash as hard as possible.
Which
of these cards smash the hardest? That's good. It's not often
basically,
that I feel like I've this is the first time I've ever had someone on the podcast that I would safely say is like an aggro player. Like I feel like you are as close to a Gwent aggro player as there is, the way you describe.
Oh, we both are.
Yeah,
for sure.
both of you. Yeah. Sorry, both of you. Like the way you describe.
Smash points, smork it.
Yeah, like good. Not even smork. Yeah, smork is it's a Twitch emote that references going face, which Gwent does not have. We are faceless men and women, and everything in between in the world of Gwent, which is still one of the most interesting things I think about Gwent. The fact that there's just no face. There's no face, and now there's setup turns. Now there's setup turns in round one, which I feel makes a huge difference. But yeah, is it just the same thing for you, Gnurrgard? Gnurrgard, go face.
Gnurrgard.
I'm not the guy that always looks for the best decks. Like sometimes I actually look for things that are just interesting. Like back after Midwinter, veterans, they were really bad because they were just worse dwarfs. But I still built a deck and played with it because it was just something interesting. Veteran itself is a card that you want to build a deck around. So if I find something like that, I want to build around it. Mm-hmm. Also, then, as I said, Elder was something really liked because it was one of the few once per round leaders left with more impact. Like Bran is also once per round, but the impact is very low. And I liked Elder for that. So I didn't know how viable it was at the start, but I still just wanted to try it out.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of just the idea of adding 4 points to a card you play kind of feels like you're playing Dandelion Poet every round. Like you've got that extra 4 point, not extra 4 point body, but 4 to 5 points like between Egg or Rotfiend and stuff like that. So, so yeah, it's just that's how it feels sometimes, and that feels really strong. That's how Morvran felt. And I get less with Morvran feels currently more cares about points more than the archetype, whereas Elder actually feels like he cares more about the archetype because you can do like very specific things with the Deathwish golds, whereas Morvran has Swears and how he's just points sometimes. Olek Gwent, hey, is that McBeard without a beard? Yes, it is McBeard with there's still, you can hear it in the mic, there's still some there. Shadowplay Red, Wusubi and Gnurgaard, how strong is your affection for Lipperino, referring to Lippy Goodman, the Skellige card that swaps your deck and graveyard? I know Shinmiri's been loving this list lately, playing Uma Lippy, playing Uma twice and whatever gold you get from Uma twice as well. Like, just this bombastically weird deck. What do you guys think about Lippy right now?
I mean, when I saw the card in PDR, I was just looking through the cards. Okay, this deals 2 damage, this deals 5 damage, this something, and this is a death wish. And then I saw Lippy and I was like, yo, what is this card?
Oh yeah,
yeah. It felt like a card from an expansion, right? Like a card like you put the basic stuff out and then you start releasing like the really wacky stuff. So like they start off with some wacky stuff in this game.
Yeah. It was basically love at first sight. Like since
Hi there,
PTR, I immediately decks around Lippy.
But the thing is, Lippy has always seemed strong, and every time I talk to Shinmiri about it, it always seems like he always has some new like insane way to play it. Like I get to play my unicorn, I get to play my opponent's unicorn, I get to play my unicorn again, and then and now he's playing Uma. But Lippy has always seemed so scary, but I feel like I am much more likely to run into any other Skellige list than Lippy at the moment. Why is is Lippy's power level too unreliable to oust Croc, like Croc Commander's Horn as just being kind of like the clear-cut winner for Skellige right now? What do you guys think about Lippy Wusubi?
Well, it's just an interesting approach to the game in general, right? It's not necessarily like OP or anything. It's just you redefine the game, basically, right? First, you force yourself to play different, you force your opponents to play different. Because generally the idea is to not waste all of your good cards in round 1, right? Because then you have to win round 3 somehow, right? And yeah, with Lippy, you just kind of turn all of that around and you're gonna throw whatever you have at them and then you're just gonna replay it again, hopefully, right? So sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, but yeah.
I think it's a card that, if the designers are able to create more cards like Lippy, man, Lippy is the bravest card. Like Usurper, I think is the bravest card. I think Usurper is the bravest card because Usurper is a card that's hard to like, but it's also hard. Like it's for them to put that in the game. I feel like and keep it in the game, even despite how people just absolutely abhor Usurper. And Usurper also is not OP, but man, does it feel like when you get the God draw with Lippy, and it's just you get to play like two best possible hands you can play twice back to back.
200 provisions in a game, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Where your leader supposedly has 167.
But at the same time, not make it oppressive. That is amazing. Like that is. It's just, I feel like it's a benchmark for design. And I think that there's a lot of cards. I feel like Gnurrgard is also like this. Like Gnurrgard, they made a card. I can't remember if I talked about this just in a recent deck video or on the last podcast, but it bears repeating that Gnurrgard, well, actually what I will say is that I'm doing daily polls on Commander's Horn Twitter. And one of the questions was, what's like the best kind of like big board changing, high provision cost card in Gwent that's faction based that does like the best job of feeling like I put this big chunky thing in my deck and I'm gonna boom when I play it. And Gnurrgard won that poll by a large margin because there's not like Vernon is also on that poll and they're both Northern Realms cards, and I had to put Wild Boar of the Sea on that poll, which is it's a big card you play that affects the board but just does not feel anything like Gnurrgard. Like Gnurrgard is just Gnurrgard is a card that if every set had like a Gnurrgard and a Lippy,
oh baby,
or like 10 Gnurrgads and Lippies, and then they release maybe 2 or 3 expansions, like there would be so many warped ways to look at deck building. Like a card like Operator, like, that's like the stuff right there. But it's hard to get those
just
effects
the thought
right.
Of it, man. Oh baby, yeah.
It's hard to get those effects right because sometimes those effects are just like they are nasty. Like I still don't understand how Camby is okay. Like Camby feels like the worst card in the game, but I never see it.
Thankfully, it
I don't
doesn't
play
see
with
play.
Yeah, it doesn't see play. But man, losing to Camby
Imagine
is just
if it did, though. Yeah.
I know, yeah. Like you can play it, and you play it if Morkvarg's in that slot when you play Camby. It's just like boom, here's my 9 points, and by the way, you don't have a last play. See you later.
What about Treyharn though? Another card like that, and it's play constantly, right?
Treyharn is also brave, and I think that.
Yeah,
I mean,
the most range. Yeah.
I think that he's too strong for what he does. I feel like what he does
the
is
most
fundamentally
rage-inducing cards for sure.
There's nothing fundamental like designing a card like Lippy. There is a long thought process about every single card in the faction when you make a card like that. Treyharn is just, I'm going to remove a card from your opponent's deck. Like that's just it's a brave design. I mean, it's like Usurper. It's just a very simple idea. You can't use your leader anymore. I've explained it, and that's it. You know how that's going to affect your. I mean, we know it even better now that there's provision caps in it, but it's still. I don't know. Like it's the complexities of balancing like Gnurrgard. Like they all have orders. Like when I found out that all the Revenants had orders, like I thought it was just to turn all your cards into Spectres, but no, like they all have orders to balance that. And then they pre-nerfed that card too before anybody was complaining about it. Gnurrgard was much cheaper before. I don't know. I pray to the gods of Gnurrgard. I pray to the ancient curse that envelops Eddern that we get more Gnurrgard cards for every faction. Just a few more questions from the chat here. Did I even pose the question to you guys, or did I just like run away with that question? I'm just trying to see if any tags are here. Let's see. A lot of people talking about Shupe. How would you nerf Shupe? Talking about control and such. I think I was talking for so long, I just went right past the questions here. With the March expansion, we will get new leaders. What would you like to have those leaders do? And Osama in the chat. Well, for me, I think having a leader that could lock, I think seems like a very core leader that could be added to the game without any eyebrow raising. And I think that
we miss you out of it.
Yeah, I mean, let's just say it. we miss putting people in a dungeon. And yeah, what if he just has like a lock to spend, or even 2 locks to spend? I don't know. Could be interesting. I think 2 locks maybe in this universe that would change the meta for sure. That's just me though. There's a lot of new mechanics in the game right now. Like we can concept like what a leader could do, I guess. But I mean, if you guys have any like quick ideas of like stuff that has left the game, like Dagon, obviously, it'd be cool if I could play a weather. You think playing a weather card would be too good for a leader ability if it was a 1 use? I don't think it would be too good as a 1 use.
I mean, it's 8 points, right? It's just like Woodland, just in a different way.
Yeah.
So you would have to have synergy to actually make it work because it's slow. It's not a finisher like Woodland is. But you can always balance that also with provisions, right? But something I want to see, and I was really disappointed when I saw Arnulf, even though the card is really cool, that Arnulf is just another Bloodthirst leader, when I really hoped that he would be like Self-Wound, because Self-Wound they have a lot of cards sprinkled here and there, but it's just not a functioning archetype. I talked to a friend about it, and I said, I would rather have him like spawn 3 Sirens with 1 strength, and they hit him. Right?
Yeah,
so he's a 12-point dude, and you give him 3 Sirens, they hit him, he goes to 9, so you get 3 damage triggers, you have a damaged body on board, and you get 6 points with it. And you put something on your opponent's board if that's of any use for you.
I think I'd feel better about it if Arnulf wasn't doomed in that case, but that would be way too strong. I think it's just because I would want, if I had a deck, the thing about Arnulf is like basically when you play, like Arnulf is a cool single-use leader, unlike Woodland Spirit, where you want to use his ability at the end. Arnulf is like you want to use it more so at the beginning of a round to make all the cards in your hand better, because like it basically supercharges you as long as you have those damaged units on the board, or you've already got engines like Greatsword's already on the board. I feel like it's too much of a blend between Croc and Herald. Arnulf, he's kind of like,
yeah, exactly.
He gives you like a good round like Herald does, or like Croc can give you every round, but he also has ways of making Madman Lugos like much better. So like you can just build a deck that has different ways of putting in removal pieces. I think he's cool. Yeah. I think that Scalligan needs more for sure. Yeah, so Self-Wound, that's a good one. I'd like to play a veterans list that just makes more sense with like
Yeah, I miss my veterans.
Yeah, veterans, man, veterans. I want to hear those voice lines again. Seen it all already. All right, last question from the chat here. Let's see if there is one more question from the chat. We'll go with Hippopotamus. What is your most favorite deck that you've ever made? And let's have this question span all Gwent permutations. So closed beta, open beta. What deck that you built gave you the most joy when you played it? Question.
Wusubi can start this time.
Lippy? It's just like such an insanely creative approach to the game, right? You change the rules, so I think that would be the one, because like no other deck really changed how the game is supposed to be played in a way, right? Lippy just completely turns everything around. So yeah, for me, Lippy definitely.
Cool.
Yeah, for me also, Lippy is just since I saw the card, I was like, okay, I want to deck out. Then I talked to Swim a lot, and he was also trying to make it work. And then start of Homecoming, I had a bad Lippy list, and I worked a lot on it until it actually got really good. Gave it to Shinmiri, he played it, said it was really. Yeah, from there on, then every patch I tried to make Lippy work, and people kind of know me now for Lippy, so it's pretty cool. Never had that.
Oh yeah, you're the Lippy guy.
You were you've always been like the veterans guy to me, but maybe that was just because.
That's true.
I just happened to like catch. That's like when I guess I got to know your lists. I guess when I
mean, there were like 3 veterans people in open beta, right? Like 3 people.
Ash Lizzle played
that people talked about. Yeah. And Ash, Shinmiri, and me, we all veterans guys, and they were like much more popular than I was.
I never played Skellige, but when I did play Skellige, it was veteran. It sounds like the Dos Equis guy. I don't always play Skellige, but when I did, it was veterans. It's always veterans.
Oh, so you never really joined the dark side, right?
No, I didn't play Axeman. I didn't play Great Swords. I actually just.
I suddenly like you a lot more, sir.
Yeah, Great Swords was
I'm just kidding.
I thought that in the end, Northern Realms, like I was all about the Boosty Boys. I didn't do. Sorry, for me, my question, that was Anivia's list, the Boosty Boys. But for me, my favorite list was it was a list that I believe Casper actually played in the final Gwent Open 7, where it was a list like I didn't make his list, but it was a similar idea where you use the Varied Officers, Vanilla Geralt, and Siri Dash. And,
do you mean like swap Squirtle?
Yeah, you swap and you drop like the 20-point officers and Swapatel. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I had a version of that. I don't know. I'm sure Casper didn't run Siri Nova, or he ran Geralt Vanilla though, I think. But yeah, it was a Swapatel list, and I absolutely loved that list so much. I loved it. So that was
you made like 3 videos or 4 videos about it on YouTube.
I think probably made Mulligan Dash. Well, I made a lot of Siri Dash videos. I missed that card dearly. I don't know if I don't know if you can just introduce that effect back in the game or not. I think that they may have thought about it at one point, but they want to make sure they do it right. Because strengthening is scary. And that's what Siri Nova did. She strengthened herself and went back into your deck. So, but like having her at like 18 in your deck for Swapatel was like nutty. So it was pretty cool. That was one of my favorite lists. Squirtle list, not a Monsters list or a Northern Realms list. And no, not True King Aradin, which maybe people thought I was going to say. Good old True King Aradin. The first deck that Impetuous Panda ever played was my deck. It was a unitless Aradin list, and it was the best.
Oh God!
All right, guys, this was great. We can wrap this up. Thanks so much for the extra long podcast, my friends. Where can people find you out there? Where can people find you, Gnurgard, when you're streaming? I have your Twitter up there. You can find you at Gnurgard, but you stream on a regular basis, I imagine?
Not regular, because a lot of things to do, but I try to stream from time to time. Yeah, exactly. And then Twitter, it's all Gnurgard, because nobody has that name. And then also, if you want, I have a Discord named Point Slam Paradise, so if you want to hang out with Wusubi and me, we're on there on a daily basis.
Oh shit! I like that. I didn't know that existed.
Point Slam Paradise.
Oh man! Drop a link to that Discord into the group chat, and
sure.
I'll make sure that goes into the show notes, as well as the TLG updated website, of course, and the TLG Discord, of course. So you guys can all go in and congratulate all the TLG members moving on to Gwent Open number 8 and such. So that's all good there. And Wusubi, where can people find you out there?
I'll probably just hang around in some Twitch chats. I don't really stream or have any Twitter, so it's, yeah.
So you guys are more, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the show. It's more behind the scenes work that you guys do. You guys like to refine doing co-ops. Sure. You're more on the thinking, you're the thinking man's guest, that kind of thing. So while players...
We're not the heavy grinders, for sure. Yeah.
You guys just, you just like to smash every now and then. It's like, you guys feel like smashing a face in? That's, just a couple faces. That's all I want to do. Get that satisfaction. It's true. Yeah, thanks, guys. I really appreciate you coming on. And because my Stream Deck isn't working, I am just going to manually play the outro right now. But I will say my goodbyes as I try to get this podcast up before the end of the week in Europe, at least. I have 2 hours to do it. Let's see if I can get there. But Gnurgard and Wusubi, thanks so much for coming on the show. It was great to talk to you guys, meet you guys, kind of like actually have a real conversation with you, kind of, outside of the text space. It's always great to hang out and meet people on this show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
It was a pleasure.
The pleasure is all mine. So I'm going to play the outro now. And for everybody in the chat, thanks so much for showing up in the chat. Thanks for all the people that are fans of TLG, fans of Commander's Horn. And also, Jamoni, Eridan's Endless Fleet. No, that was my favorite deck. Keep on, what was the card that duplicated the stuff in the deck? Necker Warrior. Keep Necker Warrior and put a bunch of Eridan ships into your deck and then just Navigator them all out. That was my favorite list.
Oh, God.
And that list will never exist. That list is never coming back, I don't think. But we'll see. That's my last ramble. Thanks, guys. This is McBeard for Gnurgard and Wusubi. Best of luck on the path.